The Tibetan Book of the Dead. Part 14. Liberation by Wearing. Natural liberation of the psychophysical aggregates. Context. As explained in the earlier chapters, this cycle of teachings contains a number of instructions which can effect liberation from cyclic existence without prior experience of the meditations associated with the vehicle of indestructible reality, Vajrayana. Amongst these expressions of the sacred teachings is this liberation by wearing, which is said to effect liberation simply by its being worn as a mantra amulet on the body at the time of death, or by its being heard at the time of death. The text of this chapter expresses the enlightened intention of the peaceful and wrathful deities in the form of mantra letters. These mantra letters are the resonance of the pure awareness of the deities expressed in the form of letter shapes and sounds. Many practitioners of this cycle of teachings wear this mantra circle in an amulet throughout their lives. For others, it is recommended that the mantra amulet should be worn at the time of death and not removed. It is also recommended that this text should be read aloud at the conclusion of each reading of the Liberation by Hearing, Chapter 11. The Mantra Circle of the Peaceful and Wrathful Deities. Herein is contained the liberation by wearing, natural liberation of the psychophysical aggregates, an extract from the Peaceful and Wrathful Deities, a profound sacred teaching entitled Natural Liberation Through Recognition of Enlightened Intention. I bow down to the primordial lords, Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri, and to the peaceful and wrathful deities. This text is the liberation by wearing, natural liberation of the psychophysical aggregates, in which the mantras of the peaceful and wrathful deities, those gone to bliss, are encompassed. How wonderful! This is a great naturally arising mantra circle. The yogin who embraces this is immensely fortunate. The yogin who encounters this is immensely fortunate. The yogin who upholds this is immensely fortunate. The yogin who reads this is immensely fortunate. As it confers liberation by reading, there is no need for meditation. As it confers liberation by wearing, there is no need for spiritual practice. As it confers liberation through contact, there is no need for training. As it confers liberation through feeling, there is no need for reflection. This mantra circle confers natural liberation wherever it is encountered. This is the natural liberation of the psychophysical aggregates. This is a field of experience of the fortunate. Part 1. How wonderful! The enlightened intention of the Father Samantabhadra manifests as the following naturally present mantra syllables of Ati Yoga. Om Ahom, Ema Kiri Kiri, Masta Bali Bali, Samita Suru Suru, Kundalima Sumasu, Ekaril di Suba Staye Chakira Bulita Chayesa Munta Charya Sugaye, Biti Sanaye Biagulie Sakaridukani, Matara Betana, Paraliha Sana, Maka Talekana, Samburata, Maika Charatamba, Surya Gata Raye, Bashana Ranabiti, Saguti Paya, Gura Paga Kara Nalam, Narana Rayi Tara Patalam, Sirna Besa Raspalam, Buddha Akisha Hage, Lam Sasar, Li Marama Rara Laha'a. This is the 26th line, Supreme Essential Mantra, through which the enlightened intention of Samantabhadra will naturally liberate mental apprehension in awareness as an indestructible chain of light, primordially pure and indivisible from Samantabhadra when it is worn at the time of death. While externally a cloudless sky will appear. How wonderful! The enlightened intention of the Mother Samantabhadri manifests as the following naturally present mantra syllables of Ati Yoga. This is the essential mantra, liberating body, speech, and mind in primordial purity. Om Ahum, Ema Kiri Kiri, Mastabali, Samita Suru Suru, Kundalimasu, Ekarili Subastaye, Chata Bolita, Chaye Samunta, Charya Sugaye, Biti Sana, Biaguye, Kiri Dakini, Daka Mahabori, Tana Paralihi, Sanankara, Takelam, Sambuddha Rata, Mega Charapatam, Tapa Surya Gatara, A. Mana Parabiho, Tinga Ralaya, Masmin Sagotila, Taya Gora Gora, Ranga Kala Ranalam, Nara Naralam, Itara Patalam, Sena Sena Bisaralam, Sakelam Sasa, Ra La Mama Rala. This is the essential mantra, through which the enlightened intention of Samantabhadri liberates the dynamic motion of awareness, unencumbered by phenomenal characteristics, in unborn emptiness. This is the 29-line Supreme Essential Mantra, through which liberation will occur in primordial purity, indivisible from Samantabhadri, when it is worn at the time of death. While externally a clear and unobscured sky will appear. How wonderful! To symbolize the perfection of all enlightened attributes, the following 25 mantras, which reverse attachment, are presented. To avert attachment to the sense faculties, there is the mantra Karma Raksha Gihamti. When it is worn at the time of death, it will confer natural liberation by subduing the beguiling force of the dissonant mental states, while externally a bright red rainbow will appear. To avert attachment to the psychophysical aggregates, there is the mantra Bikarana So Gadgling. When it is worn at the time of death, it will confer natural liberation by subduing the beguiling force of the psychophysical aggregates, while externally a bright yellow rainbow will appear. To avert attachment to all sense objects, there is the mantra Buga Rila Bardo Tree. When it is worn at the time of death, it will confer natural liberation by subduing the beguiling force of Deva's sun, while externally a bright white rainbow will appear. To let go of mental objects, there is the mantra Rama Kala Samikye. When it is worn at the time of death, it will confer natural liberation by subduing the beguiling force of the Lord of Death, while externally a bright green rainbow will appear. To sever past sensations right where they are, there is the mantra Matam Pap Eramiti. When it is worn at the time of death, it will naturally liberate the ground of all consciousness in primordial purity, while externally a bright blue rainbow will appear. To recognize the appearance of compounded aggregations, there is the mantra Kata Rekshasa Miglung. When it is worn at the time of death, it will spontaneously liberate naturally manifesting appearances in primordial purity, while externally a phenomenon like the unfolding of dazzling brocade will appear. To enter the stronghold of awareness, there is the mantra Eka Rana Bekchasa. When it is worn at the time of death, it will induce the attainment of the irreversible level, while externally Shariram relics will appear following the cremation. To eradicate the continuum of bewilderment, there is the mantra Yari Mutra Saguli. When it is worn at the time of death, it will naturally liberate the three world systems in primordial purity, while externally Churiram relics will appear following the cremation. To successively liberate the 6 classes of living beings, there is the mantra Yasiram Lung Palaya. When it is worn at the time of death, it will naturally liberate beings of the 6 classes in primordial purity, while externally Nyariram relics will appear following the cremation. To purge cyclic existence from its depths, there is the mantra Mama Kolinam Samanta. When it is worn at the time of death, it will churn the depths of all lower existences, while externally Pancharam relics will appear following the cremation. To suppress apparitional reality, there is the mantra Garilam Bari Mamti. When it is worn at the time of death, it will guide the deceased to the genuine reality, while externally Sariram relics will appear following the cremation. To let go of the source of the play of phenomena, there is the mantra Bhuga Sinha Pangala. When it is worn at the time of death, it will liberate the phenomena that arise right where they are, while externally manifold shimmering rainbows will appear. To sever the tethers of attachment, there is the mantra Rami Spiketapa. When it is worn at the time of death, it will liberate objects of attachment in the expanse of reality, while externally a clear and bright sky will appear. To focus on the chains of light, there is the mantra Bikumala Batamke. When it is worn at the time of death, it will induce the visionary appearance of increasing contemplative experience, while externally patterns will arise from the rainbow colors in the sky. To view the seal of the deity, there is the mantra Samanyi Vadirabha. When it is worn at the time of death, it will induce the visionary appearance of reaching the limit of awareness, while externally the forms of the deities will appear. To purify mistaken views and meditations, there is the mantra Vajrasattva Tidhome. When it is worn at the time of death, awareness will be naturally perfected, while externally white rainbow lights will appear. To simultaneously reach the levels and the paths, there is the mantra Gepa Suraga Namye. When it is worn at the time of death, the levels and paths will be simultaneously perfected, while externally the natural sound of reality will resound. To sever the basis of views which indulge in mental activity, there is the mantra Dhamma Patisaguli. When it is worn at the time of death, digressions will be liberated right where they occur, while externally white rays of light will appear. To cause the 3 Buddha bodies to manifest as the path, there is the mantra Rasmisa Makagad Tishe. When it is worn at the time of death, the 3 Buddha bodies will arise as the path, while externally perceptions of light will appear. To cause the visionary appearances to genuinely arise, there is the mantra Rupa Samimitali. When it is worn at the time of death, a simultaneous naked liberation will occur, while externally winds and breezes will arise in the atmosphere. To terminate attachment to sound, there is the mantra Nati Balagilisa. When it is worn at the time of death, liberation will occur in the inexpressible, ineffable state, while externally the number of rainbow lights that are seen will transcend recollection. To master the levels of exalted meditative concentration, there is the mantra Gacha Payampa Etam. When it is worn at the time of death, the singular perfection of the levels and paths will be reached, while externally the number of rainbow lights that are seen will induce non-conceptuality. To extend Buddha activity to its limits, there is the mantra Karma Ekanusa. When it is worn at the time of death, liberation will occur as essence, natural expression, and compassionate energy, while externally manifold subtle relics will appear following the cremation. To avert expressed attachment to Buddhahood, there is the mantra Santri Mama Kamata. When it is worn at the time of death, the three Buddha bodies will be liberated in the space of primordial purity, while externally a clear sky and shimmering rainbow will appear. To discover the abodes of the conquerors and their children, there is the mantra Nala Kepa Kilisa. When it is worn at the time of death, it will liberate all beings who wear it and are touched by its breath, while externally rainbows and subtle relics will multiply. How wonderful! Since the unified enlightened intention of non-dual Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri is naturally present, each of these individual mantras has the capacity to confer liberation. Thus they are known as the 25 seminal points, or mantra lines, in which reality naturally resonates and naturally arises. Samaya. Part 2. How wonderful! Then the male and female consorts, Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri, having entered into non-dual union, emit multiple male and female emanations, from which arises the mandala of the 100 enlightened families of the peaceful and wrathful deities. Within the naturally arising diffusive expanse of the enlightened intention of the 42 peaceful deities, like the sun emerging from the clouds, this naturally arising enlightened intention then manifests as follows. Within the field of experience of fortunate beings, Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Janana Dhatu A is the unified enlightened intention of the 42 peaceful deities. Thus the mass of conceptual thoughts will be liberated in primordial purity, as an expanse of supreme pristine cognition, while externally the indestructible sound of these 16 syllables and inestimable rainbow lights and relics will appear. How wonderful! Then the individual enlightened intentions of the 42 peaceful deities naturally arise. Om Hum Sva Am Ha. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise, in the form of these seed syllables of the 5 male Buddhas of the enlightened families. Thus the 5 psychophysical aggregates will be naturally liberated, and they will arise as the 5 pristine cognitions, while externally 5 kinds of bone relic will appear following the cremation. Mum Lam Mam Pyam Tam. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 5 female Buddhas of the enlightened families. Thus the 5 elements will be naturally liberated, and they will arise inseparably from the 5 female Buddhas, while externally 5 colored rainbows will appear. Om Jina Jik is the enlightened intention of Vairochana. Thus the aggregate of form will be liberated in the pristine cognition of reality's expanse, while externally white rainbow lights will shine, and 5-colored Pancharam relics, indicating attainment of the 5 Buddha bodies, will be retrieved from the heart following cremation, for which reason these are known as the supreme bone relics of the Tathagata family. Hum Vajrajik is the enlightened intention of Vajrasattva. Thus, the aggregate of consciousness will be liberated in the mirror-like pristine cognition, while externally, blue rainbow lights will shine, and blue-colored Churiran relics, indicating an increase in enlightened attributes, will be retrieved from the blood following cremation, for which reason these are known as the supreme bone relics of the Vajra family. Sva Ratna Drik is the enlightened intention of Ratna Sambhava. Thus, the aggregate of feeling will be liberated in the pristine cognition of sameness, while externally, yellow rainbow lights will shine, and yellow-colored Sariran relics, indicating the fulfillment of all wishes, will be retrieved from the serous fluid following cremation, for which reason these are known as the supreme bone relics of the Ratna family. Arolik is the enlightened intention of Amitabha. Thus, the aggregate of perception will be liberated in the pristine cognition of discernment, while externally, red rainbow lights will shine, and red-colored Sariran relics, indicating attainment of the unborn reality, will be retrieved from the flesh following cremation, for which reason these are known as the supreme bone relics of the Padma family. Ha Prajna Drik is the enlightened intention of Amoga Siddhi. Thus, the aggregate of motivational tendencies will be liberated in the pristine cognition of accomplishment, while externally green rainbow lights will shine, and green-colored Nyariran relics, indicating the attainment of the emanational body, will be retrieved from the marrow following cremation, for which reason these are known as the supreme bone relics of the Karma family. Mum Datvishvari is the enlightened intention of Akasha Datvishvari. Thus, the appearances of the space element will be naturally liberated, while externally piercing white rainbow lights will shine in the sky. Lam Dvesharati is the enlightened intention of Buddhalochana. Thus, the earth element will be naturally liberated, while externally piercing yellow rainbow lights will shine in the sky. Mam Moharati is the enlightened intention of Mamaki. Thus, the water element will be naturally liberated, while externally piercing blue rainbow lights will shine in the sky. Pam Ragarati is the enlightened intention of Pandaravashini. Thus, the fire element will be naturally liberated, while externally piercing red rainbow lights will shine in the sky. Tam Vajrarati is the enlightened intention of Samayatara. Thus, the wind element will be naturally liberated, while externally piercing green rainbow lights will shine in the sky. Kshim Mai Hum Tram Hri Mum Thlim Jim. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 8 male bodhisattvas. Thus, the 8 classes of consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from the 8 male bodhisattvas, while externally many subtle relics will appear following the cremation. Kshim Hi Rajaya Svaha is the enlightened intention of the male bodhisattva Kshitigarbha. Thus, visual consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Kshitigarbha. Mai Dharani Svaha is the enlightened intention of the male bodhisattva Maitreya. Thus, auditory consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Maitreya. Hum Sarajaya Svaha is the enlightened intention of the male bodhisattva Samantabhadra. Thus, olfactory consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Samantabhadra. Tram a gabaya svaha is the enlightened intention of the male bodhisattva, Akasha Gaba. Thus, gustatory consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Akasha Gaba. Hri ha hum padma bata ma svaha is the enlightened intention of the male bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara. Thus, tactile consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Avalokiteshvara. Mum Shri Amragaya Svaha is the enlightened intention of the male bodhisattva, Manjushri. Thus, mental consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Manjushri. Thlim Nisarambaya Svaha is the enlightened intention of the male bodhisattva, Nivarana Vishkambin. Thus, the ground of all consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Nivarana Vishkambin. Jim Kurupani Hri Svaha is the enlightened intention of the male bodhisattva, Vajrapani. Thus, the dissonant consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Vajrapani. Through these enlightened intentions of the 8 male bodhisattvas, the 8 classes of consciousness will be naturally liberated, and diverse, shimmering rainbow lights will appear. Hum Hum Tram Ja Hri Vam Ho Ah. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 8 female bodhisattvas. Thus, mental constructs associated with the 8 objects of consciousness will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from the 8 female bodhisattvas, while externally a shower of flowers will fall. Hum Lasya Samayastvam is the enlightened intention of Lasya. Thus, mental constructs associated with physical form will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Lasya. Hum Pushpe Avesha is the enlightened intention of Pushpa. Thus, mental constructs associated with past events will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Pushpa. Tram Malye Samaha Ho is the enlightened intention of Malya. Thus, mental constructs associated with apparent phenomena will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Malya. Ja Dupe Praveshyastvam is the enlightened intention of Dupa. Thus, mental constructs associated with objects of smell will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Dupa. Hri Giti Ragoham is the enlightened intention of Gita. Thus, mental constructs associated with objects of sound will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Gita. Vam Dipa Sukhini is the enlightened intention of Aloka. Thus, mental constructs associated with future events will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Aloka. Ho Gande Chita Ho is the enlightened intention of Ganda. Thus, mental constructs associated with present events will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Ganda. Anriti Ragayami is the enlightened intention of Nati. Thus, mental constructs associated with objects of taste will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from Nati. Through these enlightened intentions of the 8 female bodhisattvas, mental constructs associated with the 8 objects of consciousness will be naturally liberated, while externally a shower of flowers and sounds of music will manifest as the transfer of consciousness occurs. Krim Pram Trum Ksham Srum Ye. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 6 sages. Thus, the 6 dissonant mental states will be naturally liberated. The womb entrances of the 6 classes of beings will be obstructed, and the Buddha body of emanation will continuously manifest for the benefit of sentient beings, while externally manifold subtle relics will appear following the cremation. Om Muni Krim Svaha is the enlightened intention of Devendra Chakra. Thus, pride, the entrance to the God realms, will be obstructed. Om Muni Pram Svaha is the enlightened intention of Vemachitra. Thus, envy, the entrance to the anti-God realm, will be obstructed. Om Muni Trum Svaha is the enlightened intention of Sakya Muni. Thus, desire, the entrance to the human realm, will be obstructed. Om Muni Ksham Svaha is the enlightened intention of Stira Simha. Thus, delusion, the entrance to the animal realm, will be obstructed. Om Muni Srum Svaha is the enlightened intention of Jvalamukha. Thus, miserliness, the entrance to the anguished spirit realms, will be obstructed. Om Muni Ye Svaha is the enlightened intention of Dharmaraja. Thus, hatred, the entrance to the hell realms, will be obstructed. Through these enlightened intentions of the 6 emanational sages, the entrance to the 6 imperfect classes of existence will be obstructed, and the altruistic activities of the pure emanational bodies will manifest, while externally shimmering rainbows will appear amidst the clouds. Hum, 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 ja, hum, vam, ho. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 8 male and female gatekeepers. Thus, the entrances to the 4 types of birth will be obstructed, and the 4 immeasurable aspirations will grow within the mental continuum, while externally the 4 corresponding rainbow lights, white, yellow, red, and green, will appear following the cremation. Om Vajrakrodha Vijaya Hum is the enlightened intention of Vijaya. Thus, mental constructs associated with eternalism will be naturally liberated, and all acts of pacification will be accomplished. Om Vajrakrodha Yamantaka Hum is the enlightened intention of Yamantaka. Thus, mental constructs associated with nihilism will be naturally liberated, and all acts of enrichment will be accomplished. Om Padmanta Krita Hayagriva Hum is the enlightened intention of Hayagriva Raja. Thus, mental constructs associated with egoism will be naturally liberated, and all acts of subjugation will be accomplished. Om Vajrakrodha Amrita Kundali Hum is the enlightened intention of Amrita Kundalin. Thus, mental constructs associated with substantialism will be naturally liberated, and all acts of wrath will be accomplished. Through these enlightened intentions of the 4 male gatekeepers, the 4 extremes, including eternalism and nihilism, will be naturally liberated, and the 4 enlightened activities will be accomplished. While externally the 4 corresponding rainbow lights, white, yellow, red, and green, will appear. Om Vajrankusha Ja is the enlightened intention of Ankusha. Thus, the entrance to miraculous birth will be obstructed, and immeasurable compassion will grow within the mental continuum. Om Vajrapasha Hum is the enlightened intention of Pasha. Thus, the entrance to womb birth will be obstructed, and immeasurable loving kindness will grow within the mental continuum. Om Vajraspota Vam is the enlightened intention of Spota. Thus, the entrance to egg birth will be obstructed, and immeasurable sympathetic joy will grow within the mental continuum. Om Vajra Ganta Ho is the enlightened intention of Ganta. Thus the entrance to birth through heat and moisture will be obstructed, and immeasurable equanimity will grow within the mental continuum. Through these enlightened intentions of the 4 female gatekeepers, the entrances to the 4 types of birth will be obstructed, and the 4 immeasurable aspirations will grow within the mental continuum, while externally the 4 corresponding rainbow lights, white, yellow, red, and green, will appear. Through this expansive diffusion of the enlightened intention of the Buddha mind of the 42 peaceful deities, the aggregate of conceptual thoughts is naturally liberated, causing bone relics, small relics, and rainbow lights to appear. How wonderful! Within the naturally arising diffusive expanse of the enlightened intention of the 60 Herukas, like the sun emerging from the clouds, this naturally arising enlightened intention then manifests as follows. Within the field of experience of fortunate beings, Om Rulu Rulu Hum Byo Hum. This mantra is the unified enlightened intention of the 60 Herukas. Thus, mental constructs associated with dissonant mental states are liberated in primordial purity as an expanse of supreme pristine cognition, while externally the indestructible sound of the 8 syllables of the Rulu mantra will resound, and manifold white fiery lights will shine in the sky following the cremation. How wonderful! Then the enlightened intentions of all the 60 Herukas naturally arise individually. Hum, 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 hum. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 6 male Herukas. Thus the 6 dissonant mental states will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from the 6 Herukas, while externally 6 colored flames will appear during the cremation. Hum, 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 hum. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 6 Ishvari. Thus, mental constructs associated with the 6 objects will be naturally liberated and arise inseparably from the 6 Ishvari, while externally 6 colored rainbow lights will appear during the cremation. Om Maha Krodha Maha Shri Heruka Hom Pat is the enlightened intention of Mahotara Heruka. Thus the dissonant mental state of ignorance will be liberated in primordial purity, while externally dark brown flames will spiral to the right during the cremation, unequivocally indicating an irreversible liberation inseparable from Mahotara. Om Buddha Krodha Mahashri Heruka Hum Pat is the enlightened intention of Buddha Heruka. Thus the dissonant mental state of delusion will be liberated in primordial purity, while externally brilliant white flames will shoot upwards during the cremation, unequivocally indicating liberation inseparable from Buddha Heruka, as the deceased will be born in the central Buddha field of the denser ray. Om Vajra Krodha Mahasri Heruka Hum Pat is the enlightened intention of Vajra Heruka. Thus the dissonant mental state of hatred will be liberated in primordial purity, while externally dark blue flames will shoot towards the east during the cremation, unequivocally indicating liberation inseparable from Vajra Heruka, as the deceased will be born in the eastern Buddha field of manifest joy. Om Ratna Krodha Mahashri Heruka Hum Pat is the enlightened intention of Ratna Heruka. Thus the dissonant mental state of pride will be liberated in primordial purity, while externally dark yellow flames will shoot towards the south during the cremation, unequivocally indicating liberation inseparable from Ratna Heruka, as the deceased will be born in the southern Buddha field of the joyful. Om Padma Krodha Mahashri Heruka Hum Pat is the enlightened intention of Padma Heruka. Thus, the dissonant mental state of desire will be liberated in primordial purity, while externally dark red flames will shoot towards the west during the cremation, unequivocally indicating liberation inseparable from Padma Heruka, as the deceased will be born in the western Buddha field of the blissful. Om Kama Krodha Mahashri Heruka Hum Pat is the enlightened intention of Karma Heruka. Thus, the dissonant mental state of envy will be liberated in primordial purity, while externally dark green flames will shoot towards the north during the cremation, unequivocally indicating liberation inseparable from Karma Heruka, as the deceased will be born in the northern Buddha field of the matrix of activity. Om Maha Krodeshvare Tvam is the enlightened intention of Maha Krodeshvari. Thus, mental constructs associated with apparent phenomena will be naturally liberated, while externally smoke will spiral to the right during the cremation, indicating liberation inseparable from Datvishvari. Om Buddha Krodeshvari Tvam is the enlightened intention of Buddha Krodeshvari. Thus, mental constructs associated with physical objects will be naturally liberated, while externally smoke will spiral upwards during the cremation, indicating liberation inseparable from Buddha Krodeshvari. Om Vajra Krodeshvari Tvam is the enlightened intention of Vajra Krodeshvari. Thus, mental constructs associated with objects of sound will be naturally liberated, while externally smoke will spiral to the east during the cremation, indicating liberation inseparable from Vajra Krodeshvari. Om Ratna Krodeshvari Tvam is the enlightened intention of Ratna Krodeshvari. Thus, mental constructs associated with objects of smell will be naturally liberated, while externally smoke will spiral to the south during the cremation, indicating liberation inseparable from Ratna Krodeshvari. Om Padma Krodeshvari Tvam is the enlightened intention of Padma Krodeshvari. Thus, mental constructs associated with objects of taste will be naturally liberated, while externally smoke will spiral to the west during the cremation, indicating liberation inseparable from Padma Krodeshvari. Om Kama Krodeshvari Tvam is the enlightened intention of Kama Krodeshvari. Thus, mental constructs associated with objects of touch will be naturally liberated, while externally smoke will spiral to the north during the cremation, indicating liberation inseparable from Kama Krodeshvari. Through the expansive diffusion of these naturally arising enlightened intentions of the 12 principal Herukas, the host of mental constructs associated with the dissonant states will be naturally liberated, while the 5 Buddha fields will be mastered. Ha, 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 ha. The mantra syllables of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 8 Matara. Thus, mental constructs associated with the 8 classes of consciousness will be naturally liberated, while externally fiery sparks will spiral and shoot to the right during the cremation. Om Vajra Gauri Ha is the enlightened intention of Gauri, the white female wrathful deity. Thus, mental constructs associated with the dissonant consciousness will be subdued. Om Vajra Chauri Ha is the enlightened intention of Chauri, the yellow female wrathful deity. Thus, beings of the 6 classes will be propelled into higher rebirths. Om Vajra Pramoha Ha is the enlightened intention of Pramoha, the red female wrathful deity. Thus, beings of the 6 classes will be steered away from cyclic existence. Om Vajra Vetali Ha is the enlightened intention of Vetali, the dark green female wrathful deity. Thus, liberation will occur in the enlightened intention of unchanging reality. Om Vajra Pukasi Ha is the enlightened intention of Pukasi, the yellowish-red female wrathful deity. Thus, beings will be propelled from dissonant mental states into higher rebirths. Om Vajra Gasmari Ha is the enlightened intention of Gasmari, the green female wrathful deity. Thus, cyclic existence will be purified right where it is, while externally fiery sparks will spiral and shoot to the right during the cremation. Om Vajra Chandali Ha is the enlightened intention of Chandali, the pale yellow female wrathful deity. Thus, dissonant mental states and erroneous thoughts will be severed. Om Vajra Shmashani Ha is the enlightened intention of Smashani, the pale blue female wrathful deity. Thus, the buttresses of dissonant mental states will be severed. Through these enlightened intentions of the 8 Matara, the deceased will be guided out of cyclic existence, while externally fiery sparks will spiral and shoot forth during the cremation. Hey, 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 hey. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 8 Pishachi. Thus, mental constructs associated with the 8 objects of consciousness will be naturally liberated, while externally fiery sparks will shoot forth in chains during the cremation. Om Vajra Simhamukhi He is the enlightened intention of Simhamukhi. Thus, cyclic existence will be purified in its primordial nature. Om Vajra Vyagrimukhi He is the enlightened intention of Vyagrimukhi. Thus, cyclic existence will be purified in its entirety. Om Vajra Srigalamukhi He is the enlightened intention of Srigalamukhi. Thus, dissonant mental states will be purified from their very roots. Om Vajra Shvanamukhi He is the enlightened intention of Shvanamukhi. Thus, the depths of cyclic existence will be churned. Om Vajra Gridamukhi He is the enlightened intention of Gridramukhi. Thus, the 3 poisons will be severed from their roots. Om Vajra Kankamukhi He is the enlightened intention of Kankamukhi. Thus, beings will be guided from the pit of cyclic existence. Om Vajra Kakamukhi He is the enlightened intention of Kakamukhi. Thus, dissonant mental states will be purified in the creative play of reality's expanse. Om Vajra Ulukamukhi He is the enlightened intention of Ulukamukhi. Thus, the buttresses of erroneous views will be severed. Through these enlightened intentions of the 8 Pishachi, mental constructs associated with the 8 objects will be naturally liberated. Ja Hum Vam Ho. The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 4 female gatekeepers of the wrathful assembly. Thus, the entrances to the 4 types of birth will be obstructed, and the 4 immeasurable aspirations will grow within the mental continuum. Om Vajran Kusha Ja is the enlightened intention of white horse-headed Ankusha Vajra Tejasi. Thus, beings will be pulled from the abodes of cyclic existence, and immeasurable compassion will grow within the mental continuum. Om Vajrapasha Hum is the enlightened intention of yellow sow-headed Pasha Vajramoga. Thus, erroneous mental constructs will be securely tied, and immeasurable loving-kindness will grow within the mental continuum. Om Vajrasportavam is the enlightened intention of red, lion-headed Sporta Vajraloka. Thus, the dissonant mental state of ignorance will be firmly bound, and immeasurable sympathetic joy will grow within the mental continuum. Om Vajraganta Ho is the enlightened intention of green, snake-headed Ganta Vajravetali. Thus, mental constructs associated with the 5 poisons will be subdued, and immeasurable equanimity will grow within the mental continuum. Byo, 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 byo. 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 The mantra letters of the naturally present causal basis arise in the form of these seed syllables of the 28 Ishvari. Thus the aggregates of bewildered thought will be purified, while externally sounds, lights, and rays will appear during the cremation. Om Manu Rakshasi Byo is the enlightened intention of Manu Rakshasi. Om Brahmani Byo is the enlightened intention of Brahmani. Om Raudri Byo is the enlightened intention of Raudri. Om Indrani Byo is the enlightened intention of Indrani. Om Kaumari Byo is the enlightened intention of Kaumari. Om Vaishnavi Byo is the enlightened intention of Vaishnavi. Om Vajra Pingala Byo is the enlightened intention of Vajra Pingala. Om Saumi Byo is the enlightened intention of Saumi. Om Amrita Byo is the enlightened intention of Amrita. Om Dandi Byo is the enlightened intention of Dandi. Om Rakshasi Byo is the enlightened intention of Rakshasi. Om Bhakshasi Byo is the enlightened intention of Bhakshasi. Om Rati Byo is the enlightened intention of Rati. Om Rudiramadi Byo is the enlightened intention of Rudiramadi. Om Ekacharani Byo is the enlightened intention of Ekacharani Rakshasi. Om Manoharika Byo is the enlightened intention of Manoharika. Om Siddhikari Byo is the enlightened intention of Siddhikari. Om Vayudevi Byo is the enlightened intention of Vayudevi. Om Mahamarana Byo is the enlightened intention of Mahamarana. Om Agnayi Byo is the enlightened intention of Agnayi. Om Varahi Byo is the enlightened intention of Varahi. Om Chamundi Byo is the enlightened intention of Chamundi. Om Bhujana Byo is the enlightened intention of Bhujana. Om Varunani Byo is the enlightened intention of Varunani. Om Mahakali Byo is the enlightened intention of Vajra Mahakali. Om Mahachagala Byo is the enlightened intention of Vajra Mahachagala. Om Mahakumbhakani Byo is the enlightened intention of Vajra Mahakumbhakani. Om Vajra Lambodara Byo is the enlightened intention of Vajra Lambodara. Through these enlightened intentions of the 28 Ishvari, the bewildering apparitions of the intermediate state will be naturally purified, while external signs such as sounds, lights, rays, and bursts of fire and smoke will appear as the transfer of consciousness occurs. How wonderful! The innermost heart mantras of the 4 great wrathful male gatekeepers, the subjugators who naturally liberate the 4 beguiling forces, appear as an unobstructed lion's roar. whose naturally arising enlightened intentions resound as follows. Om Vajra Kroda Kyema Kyeri Karimasta Bali Bali Ata Ekarasuli Basati Enilanila Ka Ebina Abisincha. This lion's roar, which subdues the beguiling force of the psychophysical aggregates, is the enlightened intention of Mahabala Kumara Kalasha. Thus, one will dissolve indivisibly in the body of Buddha Kumara Kalasha, and liberation will occur in the naturally present expanse. Om Vajrakroda Mahamudra Jnana Ojasva Hum Sparana Patsvaha. This lion's roar, which subdues the beguiling force of the dissonant mental states, is the enlightened intention of Yamanataka Vajra Heruka. Thus one will dissolve indivisibly in the body of Vajra Heruka, and Buddhahood will then be obtained. One will be naturally liberated beyond the boundaries of the 5 poisons, and emanations and their emanations will bring about the welfare of sentient beings. Om Vajra Kroda Amrita Kundale Hom Chinda Chinda Binda Binda Hana Hana Daha Daha Pacha Pacha Hom Pat. This lion's roar, which subdues the beguiling force of Deva's son, is the enlightened intention of Amrita Kundalin. Thus one will dissolve indivisibly in the body of Amrita Kundalin, and Buddhahood will then be obtained. One will be freed from the sufferings of the lower existences, and enlightened activities will be accomplished in all directions without distinction. Om Vajra Kroda Hayagriva Hri Sava Tathagata Mahapancha Om Ayojnana Mahapunye Tista Om. This lion's roar, which subdues the beguiling force of the Lord of Death, is the enlightened intention of Hayagriva Raja. Thus Hayagriva Raja's accomplishment of long life will be obtained, and abiding in the state of reality, which is supreme bliss, ignorance and other dissonant mental states will be uprooted, the 5 poisons will be liberated, right where they are without being renounced, and the habitual tendencies of beginningless cyclic existence will be swept away. Through these innermost heart mantras of the 4 great wrathful gatekeepers, the 4 beguiling forces will be destroyed and liberated in the 4 Buddha bodies, while externally bone relics, minor relics, and rainbow lights will appear during the cremation. How wonderful! Through the expansive diffusion of these enlightened intentions of the Buddha mind of the 60 Herukas, the mass of bewildered thoughts is naturally liberated, while externally sounds, lights, and rays and bursts of fire or smoke, spiraling to the right of the pyre, as well as rainbow lights, bone relics, and small relics, and other signs will appear.